Bunmi Awoniyi, who is a judge in the state of California. Welcome to SaharaTV, Sahara Reporters in New York.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. My parents were the first generation that left. Well, actually, my parents left in the late 50s, 60s. They answered the call of Enoch Powell that said, come over to England, work the unsavory jobs or the unpleasant jobs, and in return, we'll give you an education for you and any children that you will have, and there's the possibility of citizenship. So I was actually born in England along with my siblings. My elder brother was born in Nigeria.
Have you been back to Nigeria?
Oh yes, many times.
How many times?
Oh my goodness, many times.
What was the last time?
2011.
Okay, wow.
Well, first of all, I think you have to conceive the idea is something that you actually want. Because to put yourself through the process, you're not looking necessarily at the end result of the honor that you get. The road is arduous and it's fraught with many obstacles. So I think one of the things in sitting in law schools, whether it was law school in England or law school here, that the law report books were devoid of any names that sounded like mine. And I asked myself the question, well, why not? And how comes there is not a judge of African descent? And at that time, I think it's no more than the musings of maybe a legal mind that didn't have enough to do. But that was the seed that was sown, that I think there's a time coming when there'll be an African name in these law books that we students are studying. There were many things they didn't understand. The first time I appeared in court and I said my name quickly, Bunmi Awoniyi appearing on behalf of the defendant, there was this silence, because at that time I was very British. My accent was very polished, and I said my name very quick, and I spoke softly. So everybody was quiet and said, can you say your name again, please? And then, can you spell it? And then the judge asked me that question that let me realize that no matter how far, though they had come far in American legal system, and the statement that they have acclimated, his statement was, do you have a nickname or something easier? And that again cemented that awareness that they really have not become totally familiar with the diversity of cultures even within their own country, and that there's so much in a name. And to ask me for a nickname is to take away a little bit of my heritage. Well, my background was in family law. I practiced family law for 23 years. And in fact, even going into practicing family law is not an area of specialty that I would necessarily have chosen, because it's an area that's fraught with emotions, it's sometimes volatile, and it's extremely difficult, although also rewarding. Prior to that, in England, I'd been a Crown prosecutor, so I had some criminal law experience. And yet, when the governor goes to select people, typically they look at the prosecution, DAs, ex-DAs, because a large component of our responsibility as judicial officers is actually doing criminal law assignments. So we actually are required to be able to rotate in different assignments. And that's one of the questions that was asked me in my interview in the governor's office, which is, given that such a large part of your legal career has been in family law, do you have the aptitude, the ability to pick up these other areas where the emphasis of your judicial career is going to be spent? So yes, I told the governor yes, that I'm a quick study, I will learn it, and what I do not know, I will obviously apply myself to come up to speed, because that's part of the responsibility I have. So criminal law assignments, civil law assignments, landlord, tenant, family law. I just now happen to be doing a family law assignment because there was a need for the court. And my assignment will be up most probably in 2 years, if not shorter, and then I'll rotate into a criminal law assignment. Every court gets to be able to implement its own rules and procedures for the judicial office, because we're all independently elected. 2 years is usually the minimum. But okay, if an opening comes up and there's a need for me to transfer into a criminal law assignment, I'll be transferred to a criminal law assignment.
How about the state and federal relationship? You know, do you get to move from the state court to the federal court if there's an opening, or how's that?
That's another application process. The state court application process goes to the Jenny Commission. There's many layers on that process. First of all, you submit this application. I think the application page application, in terms of page numbers, was 88 pages. And it asks everything about yourself. It asks about my time in England, who I worked for, where I lived, who supervised me, how I was terminated from unemployment, how I moved from unemployment, and you have to supply current information as to their whereabouts. Now bear in mind, your legal career maybe spans some 25 years. So just to find and locate all those individuals and to give that information, that's just part of the application process. Then in submitting an application, you tell a story. They want to know about you. What is it about you that would spark the governor's interest? Your volunteerism, your commitment to your local community, legal and just generally wise. They want people that are not just bright academic scholars. They want people that are committed to service, because this is a position of honor but also of service. So when you submit your application with all of your references, and the application probably took me the better of a part of a year to finish, because I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I was running a busy law practice. There's just not enough hours in the day to sit down and devote 40 hours to completing this application, so it took many hours. Once it's submitted, it goes to a private committee. Now this private committee, we don't get to know who the names of the judicial officers that are assigned. But when the governor receives it, if yours is an application that at least sparks their interest, because many people die on the vine, as we say, right at that stage. It doesn't make it off ground zero. And that's, I think, the most disheartening part about the application. You give us so much of your personal time with the awareness this may not even get off the ground. And despite your desire to be faith-filled and optimistic, it's the sense of, I would hate to be rejected before I even got to the first base. Many times, many times. Many times when you're sitting struggling for the answer for a particular question and you want to rush it through, or you just think, why am I doing this to myself? Because there were many times when it was just too hard just to find the time to complete it. There were other immediate responsibilities. But I think it goes back to that age-old adage. It's the rule of deferred gratification. You cannot expect some result without having put in the work to receive that result. People look at the end result and the award or the accolades or the honor, and they don't know how you toiled to actually even just fill out the paperwork and to fight with your mind that tells you this could be for nothing. So I think after that 9 months, it was 9 months, my husband was great because he had to look after and pick up some slack where I was at the office working on this, and my daughter, who also works with me, she had to find files out of storage, because you have to cite cases that you've worked on. And somehow you are meant to have had records that date back 20 years, because there is no guesswork in this application. It has to be precise. Every attorney, for every case that you cite and rely upon, you have to provide their current address, their current telephone number, because the governor's office is going to call them. And when you think about it, when you have a career that goes back 20 years, even if you conceived, this is what I would ultimately want to do, nobody behaves perfectly. There's somebody out there that has something to say that you suspect or fear may not be necessarily complimentary. I think I would be misleading you if I said I didn't worry about that. You always, even if you think to yourself, at least to my immediate recollection, I think I behaved myself appropriately, your actions could be perceived in a way that's negative. And even innocent actions could be misinterpreted and twisted. And then there are just people that truly are either envious or just don't like you. And they now have an opportunity to sabotage your effort to go forward. But I think that those that were for me were more than those that were against me. It's a different type of time. I enjoyed the vigors of private practice. But in private practice, you're never quite off duty. In private practice, you've got client demands, I've got staff demands, I am the HR manager, because I had a staff of many people and I had attorneys working for me, I had to review their work. I was the rainmaker. You know, you're responsible for bringing in clients, dealing with upset clients, irate clients, you're dealing with contentious cases, expectations of clients, you are dealing with opposing attorneys, and we are dealing also with just the high level of emotions of family law. And then, of course, I've got this judicial officer and their expectations for work of excellence. And so there's multiple demands upon your time. And even on vacation, you find that you're never really on vacation. You always got one eye on that phone, one eye on that email. You're constantly on duty. With being a judicial officer, it's a different type of stress. It's the stress of trying to make the right decision, trying to be totally focused on what you did right now, realizing that the eyes of the people are watching you. I don't have multiple things pulling on my time. So I'm not thinking about, marketing and account payables and account receivables and clients. But I am thinking about all these cases that I'm reviewing in the night before or days before, and thinking to myself, I'm not sure what my ruling is going to be on this. I'm going to wait until I hear oral arguments on this, or just juggling the notion that I'm not sure that this person's met the procedural guideline. And even though I think they may have a good case, I'm going to decline their request for relief. That's a different type of stress. Well, I practiced in England as a barrister at law. And as a barrister at law, of course, one of the first things is our dress. We wore the gown and the collar and the wig. Most probably wouldn't work as well with my hairstyle right now, yeah. But we wear that white wig, and it's very much more formal. A lot of etiquette, a lot of decorum. My learned friend for the prosecution, my learned friend for the defense, the bowing, the dining, the inns of court. There's a much greater formality. What initially attracted me to the American legal system was the lack of formality. But when you come from the English system, this can seem undue familiarity. And then there was no advertising in England, and we never discussed fees. My clerk would advertise for me. My clerk would discuss money. I had to learn when I came to America how to be a business person. You can be a great lawyer and a poor businessman, which means you're a poor lawyer. So you have to figure out, how to, open up an office. How do I market myself? What is this community looking for in a legal advocate? And how do I attract clients? That I found not just challenging, that's probably the most rewarding part of practice. I loved business. I think that's a very correct statement. I think my awareness, once I got the appointment and I sent out an email, and that email went viral because I sent some to some friends just to say thank you for your support. But I realized in terms of the Nigerian community, when one of us stands up, we all stand up. There were others that went before me on whose shoulders I actually stand. And so to show the appreciation and look back and say thank you, and that as I'm standing tall, and I'm standing tall for the generation that comes after me, that they will see my name, see what I did, and know that they too can do even more so than I have. So I think it's also part of the notion of giving back to your community. I recognize my heritage. I'm proud of my heritage. And as I share it with my American brothers and sisters, I want us as first-generation immigrants to take pride in all that we accomplished in this generation. That's an interesting hypothetical, and now that you posed it to me, I think my question would be a cautious no, because that is not my calling at this time. My calling is for those in the diaspora that are here, that desire to make their mark here. That doesn't mean that we cannot be of benefit back home, and that we cannot go back home and offer the trainings and the insights and the wealth of knowledge now that we have acquired. But I don't know that at this particular point in my career that my answer would be yes, let me leave what I have now and go back. Because it's not all about the status or the position. It's about that community that welcomed you, that embraced you, that honored you, and says, now give back to us here. Now, there's a time and a season for when I will go back. And there's a time and a season to continue to share what I've got now, but not now. I'm impressed with us as a people. We are first generation, and look at the marks that we've made. We came to benefit, to add, to change, to challenge, not just for ourselves, but for our children that come after us. And when I looked around that room at the professionals that were in that room that had made their mark on their community, I can see that America has not just embraced us, but we have embraced them, and we have given back for what they have given us. And that yet in our hearts we love our homeland, and we desire to see our homeland do and flourish with some of the things that we've been able to accomplish here. It's not just simply grandstanding. It's a desire to see the knowledge, the skills, the benefit, our awareness change our home country, because this is the pool of talent that came from our home country. How would we not want to see it flourish also? I think that's why my practice took off. And I think that's one of the things that I put in my application to the governor. I said, you want judicial officers that have the face of California. California is an immigrant community, and I understand the immigrant struggle because I am first generation and second generation. And when you look at how we treat our children, the struggle for that first generation is, I made this sacrifice so that you could have more. They have not fully acclimated. They don't understand that you can't twist ears, flick heads, or pinch, or make all these high expectations, and they have all these high expectations. So when you look at the oldest child of that first generation family, that oldest child is usually an overachiever, because they had the expectations of that mother, that father riding on their back. They most probably had all of the back home Nigerian parenting styles that are not really accepted, but which they was impressed upon them. In this house, there is no CPS or Child Protective Services, no social workers coming to save you, and if they are, let them take your clothes with you. You know, all of those things that our parents did, which was all that they knew, which we laugh about now, but which I'm still instilling in my children. It may be a modified version because of the awareness of this culture, but at its root, we realized that that's what kept our family together. That's what kept children on the straight and narrow. That's what they may joke about, laugh about, but that's what they also value. Many times. And that's why they sought me out as a family law attorney. I get the international calls from back home, relatives that will try and say, please intercede in this divorce, don't let this divorce happen, or please help our daughter, or their children were taken away by Child Protective Services. I think being able to counsel those parents and say, these are the things that you're doing wrong by this cultural standard. These are the things that we know are acceptable, but now we're in Rome. And when in Rome, we have to do some things that the Romans ask. What you do and teach them culturally has this boundary line that we cannot cross if we do not want to come to their attention. But their overwhelming fear was, my children will become rotten. They will forget our traditions. They will forget our mannerisms. They will disrespect themselves outside. They will disgrace us outside. And this is the way we train up our children. As they've stayed here more years, they've adapted because they realize their children are not being lost. But it's a struggle. And at many times, they were not on the winning side of that struggle with authorities. Many times, going through a parenting class. Which Nigerian parent is going to go to a parenting class? But if it's to get their children back, they will do that. Or going to work 2-3 jobs in the evening at night and leaving a 12-year-old at home with the 5-year-old and the 8-year-old. Well, that's not unheard of. And there's no grandma, there's no auntie to stay at home and look after them. So you leave them, you lock the door, and you tell them don't open the door, and you go to work. But when you come back, CPS has already come to collect your children. And you're thinking, why would you want to collect my children when I'm not sitting at home collecting welfare? I'm out working. Surely that's what you want. Yes, that's what we want, but this we do not want. You leaving your children at home unsupervised. It's a risk and a danger. You know, in our culture, we think a 12-year-old is extremely responsible. You know, they know how to cook, they know where to go to do the shopping, and they know how to look after their younger brother and sisters, but not here. It's not their responsibility. We saw a lot of that. I actually saw a lot of that. I had clients, whether they were from LA or in San Francisco, and particularly in the Sacramento area, that would come to me because they knew that I was a Nigerian, I understood the culture, I would understand some of the relationship dynamics that they were expressing to me. We had to change in some of the things that have stereotyped us negatively. And when you bring some of those negative stereotypes to this culture, it can backfire. Hopefully when a couple comes, even if they came with all of the traditions of, I kneel down to give my husband his food, I greet my husband in the morning, and yet I'm going to work, there has to be a modification of respect and a deference. And I think when there's a failure to do that, there's a breakdown in the family unit, because we have eyes, we have ears, we have TV, and that is influencing us. And so the wise person, I think, says, I will receive and keep and retain the good, and the not so good has to change. We have to let it go. It's the refusal to let some of those things go that I think has undermined the fabric of our relationships and led to breakdowns and divorce. I'm saying exactly that. It is very difficult. Again, it's part of that fear of losing the heritage, that every generation we come in, the language goes first and foremost. Some of the traditions go second, and then they intermarry. So the fear is we are losing our identity. But I don't know that we lose our identity if instead of forcing it upon our children, we teach them the pride of our values. We teach them identity is more than a name. It's the value system that I taught you, that I raised you in, which you will teach your children even though I'm not here. There's no mother, no father with me here in America. I'm by myself. But I've raised my children to understand my culture, my heritage. I drag them around the Nigerian parties with me. I take them to places, and even though they may speak perfect English, I know that they know their heritage.
Do you speak Yoruba, by the way?
No, I don't. Like I said, it's the first thing that's gone. And you understand why that's gone? Because that first generation parent in England didn't come and have a network of community around them. They came and they were the first ones here. And they were spread out in London and spread out in England before others came and joined. And their children that came along, they worried so much that I want my children to succeed in these English schools, that they wanted them to speak the Queen's English, because they themselves were in the workforce and they were ridiculed for their language, their accents, their inability to grasp some of the nuances. So their children came along and spoke good English. And when they trained us with Yoruba, they wanted us to speak English without an accent. Now, if they could see what that has done a generation later, I believe many of them would say, I would do it differently. But they didn't. So I don't blame them. I don't blame them because despite the lack of the language, there's all these other things. I think my first word would be, you don't give up. You cannot complain about something if you do not dare to risk rejection. The fear of rejection and the fear of failure prevents us from even getting out the boat in the first place, because nobody wants to be rejected. I know my name is Bunmi Awoniyi. I know that when the governor sees my name, there's a particular stereotype that could just be assigned to my name, and that my application may die on the vine just because of that. But if there's a chance that it not, then I will take that chance and see if I can be the one to pass that hurdle to get over to the other side. And if in doing so, somebody behind me that says, my name sounds just like that, and I thought I wouldn't even try because I didn't want to be rejected, that's the word of encouragement that I have. We press against every barrier, every boundary, and say, why not me? Not, it most probably will not be me, but why shouldn't it be me? Why shouldn't it be? And why do I have to have a watered down name, like the first time I appeared in court, when they asked me for a nickname, in order to be accepted? So I really stand impressed with Governor Jerry Brown, that yes, we're not going to be known for 419 frauds. We'll be known because we have a judicial officer on the Superior Court who goes by the name of Bunmi Awoniyi. And the other Nigerians that aspire for legal office, political office, or offices of prominence will do so proudly bearing a Nigerian name. And that will be a representation for those that are sitting out there with a dream and with a vision and with an aspiration to say, there goes I. So that's why I did it.
Do you have a nickname that your brothers called you by when you were younger?
Bonnie, the English version.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.